Picture the scene, it's 1985 and on the way home from school my friend and I decide to stop off at the shops and we go halves and pick up the latest Spectrum game. But then travelling home from the shops on the bus, my friend gets a little bit concerned and says, well, how do we decide who gets to play the game first? I say, don't worry, reach into my pocket and say, here you go, here's one for you and here's one for me. How have you done that, he says? Well, with the help of the portable piracy machine, the tape-to-tape Walkman. Before I go on, I've got to say, please don't copy your friends' games because that is illegal. And of course, I can't endorse or condone illegal activities. And besides which, taping your friend's copy of Zelda on the Switch isn't going to get you very far nowadays. That whole story was actually made up. I didn't buy one of these back in the day because when I saw it in the Lasky's catalogue, I remember thinking all those things I could do with it, but at £160, I decided not to get one. And at the time, I ended up spending quite a little bit less on something a lot more like this Iowa model in the middle here, which had a 5-band graphic equalizer, auto reverse, inline remote control. It's a lot slimmer as well, of course, so it's not often you really do need tape to tape on the go. However, I had to pick one of these up a couple of years ago because it's something that's always been playing on my mind since I first saw it. A tape-to-tape Walkman, the only one that Sony ever brought out. I just had to own one for myself. Now this one was sold as in need of repair, but still worth picking up, I thought. Now on this side, this is the B deck, so here's the controls. We've got record, play, stop, rewind, fast forward and pause on that one. Flip it over, on the A side we don't have record, that's just a play deck, so play, stop, rewind, fast forward. On the side, headphones, microphone in. It was sold with a microphone, this one. And then above there, just a couple of other controls. One to select the tape type and one to switch the Dolby noise reduction on and off. Notice under both those things, we've got the letter A, and that means they only apply to Deck A. Deck B doesn't support any of those features. So what we have here are two very simple, basic, pretty much bottom of the line Walkmans sandwiched back to back in one machine. There's no sophisticated things like auto reverse or track skip or logic controls or any of that kind of business. It's just two very simple decks. According to Walkman Central, the decks used are actually the Sony WM10 mechanism, which was used in the slimmest Walkman ever made, and that ran off one AA. Of course, this device therefore runs on two AA batteries. Now, it's been sat on the shelf in a non-working state for a couple of years, but I am aware that if you put batteries in it and press play, you can hear the motors inside running. It's just nothing spins around, which of course means, yes, you've guessed it, it needs new belts. So let me try and open this up and replace them. I've never opened a Walkman before, and I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that it's all tiny little parts, and if I do open it up, I'll never get it back together again. But since the thing doesn't actually work, I don't suppose it would be such a great loss. Anyway, I better sort of jam it back together somehow and just leave it as an unusual ornament as it was before. So let me try and get in here. There's two screws in the side and two in the bottom here. They're all tiny little screws, but that takes the door off. I've got no instructions on how to do this. I'm just figuring it out as I go along. Now, I've noticed the screws that came out of that door, they're all different sizes. If I just show you here in my hand, if I can get them all together, there's four tiny little screws there. Just put two of them here. There are two different sizes just in the door, so this is going to be fun putting back together. I'll have to pay more attention to where I'm taking the screws out of because it looks like every single screw seems to be a slightly different length. Right, now there's four in the main part here. Now, I didn't really know which side to open up initially, but there's only one side that seems to have screws in it. I opened the B deck. The A deck doesn't have any screws like this, so it looks like this is the side that opens. So taking those four screws out of the deck part there and putting those separate in the lid. Those are all the same size, luckily. See if this thing opens up now. No, it's still being held down by something, so let's try and figure out where we've got some more. There's a couple more screws in the bottom here, so I'll take those out as well. No, still doesn't want to know. There's a bit of metal here. Oh, there we go. Now that, I wasn't expecting that. So now I'm trying to figure out, hold on, which way up does that go back in? Something perhaps to figure out later on. That's the hinge mechanism, the part that it goes on the bottom of the door. So I've taken that out now. Need to take some more screws out to the side. There's a couple on either side on the top here. And one of these is particularly long, as you can see, compared to the other one. So hopefully that's it. No. Still more to go. Now, it looks like the top will come off here. It's a little bit wobbly, so just pull that, and there we go. Now, I was expecting a wire in there because that's the battery compartment, but no, it seems to just attach without a wire. So there we go. Got it in half now. Now, you can see how the belts got stuck on here. If we run the route round all there and then try and rotate the wheel, you can see how it's sticking to the wheel. It's glued to it. This is, of course, what happens with old rubber belts in things. They get this stickiness, they perish as it's known, and they lose their elasticity as well. So definitely need new belts, of course. We thought this was what the problem was. So the motor will be spinning, but nothing will be happening. You can see the date here, 1985. That'll be the date someone will have put this together. Now, it's a good job that this is a twin deck Walkman because the belt on the right hand side's come out of its track a little bit. So I'm going to take that one off and use the one on the left hand side as a reference for how it should go around these wheels. And I'm going to try and find a replacement belt, or two replacement belts, one for either side. Now, of course, not all Walkman use the same size belt. So I was trying to do a bit of research online, finding what size belt should fit in a W800. Had no luck with that. So instead, I'm going to put this one in a circle and measure it. And I can see this is about 5 centimetres across, 50 millimetres. So I'll order some of that size and a few just a bit smaller as well, just in case it's stretched. And they were from the UK, so they arrived just a couple of days later. But I noticed one thing, they do seem quite a bit thicker than the belt that came out of the machine. Now, I ordered the thinnest belts that I could, which I believe these ones are 1 millimetre across, but you can see the one out of the machine is a lot thinner than that. I thought I'd give it a go anyway, try the belt that I've got, but as I was threading it through here, I could see this is not going to work. It just doesn't fit. It's too thick. It just keeps falling off the wheels, and the reason is because those wheels have a little notch on them where the belt's supposed to ride inside. Well, these belts just ride on the top of that. They don't go inside the wheel, so that was a bad idea. I then went back to eBay to try and find some more. Unfortunately, there's one chap in the world who can help me. He's known as Doctor Walkman, I believe, on the Walkman forums, but on eBay goes by a different name. However, he's the guy who can supply the belts I need. He's got a load of different auctions for all different machines. He even mentions a machine that I've got, the W800, so I know I'm getting the right size. And as opposed to the 1 millimetre thickness belts that you can get easily in the UK, his custom-made ones, you can see there, are only 0.5 to 0.6 millimetres. So I ordered 2 sets, and those arrived from Slovakia to the UK and only took perhaps 4 days or so. Now, there's 2 different kinds of belts in here. I'm not quite sure why that is. Perhaps some are for a different machine. It's a multi-purpose set, but I can tell the 2 on the left are the ones that I need. Those are the ones that I'm going to install in here. So all I have to do is thread this under here. It's quite tricky, but not incredibly difficult. You just have to shove it under that cowling there and then put it around the motor on this end, and then the other end just threads around following the route of the belt that's still on the other side. Now, I'm sure someone will say that I have to do this with gloves on and I shouldn't be touching it with finger grease, etc., etc., but look, don't worry about it. It's my machine and it's all sorted now. Look, it's in there and it's rotating fine. So all I have to do now is do the same on the other side. So take out that old sticky, stretchy belt, put the new one in, and there you go. That one's working fine as well. You can feel the motor's not catching on anything. Everything's working well. So all I have to do, put the machine back together. Now, this will be the bit that I was a little bit concerned about. Will I be able to get it back together? Can I get all those screws in the right places? Will everything sort of join up properly, or will it be a disaster? Carefully manipulating it so not as to catch any wires in any parts of it. You can see this part goes in very well. I can see through the screw holes in there that everything's lined up properly. So just a matter of putting these tiny little screws in at the face of that. Now the next part, put the battery compartment on the top. You can see how it joins up. See where that LED is there? There's 2 connectors. There's 2 connectors on the battery compartment as well, and those push against each other, and that's how the power is transferred from the batteries to the device. Of course, there's only 5 buttons on one side and 4 on the other, so you can't put that in the wrong way around. Just carefully manipulating it so it goes over the top of everything, doesn't catch at all. And there's something incredibly satisfying about putting 2 things together and they just fit perfectly. There's no gaps, they marry up exactly. Anyway, so put those long screws into the right hole. That was the wrong one, you can see, because it wouldn't go down. That's the right one. So put the 4 screws in the top. I've put the little hinge back in the bottom that flew off before, so I can attach the door to the hinge now with 2 screws on the bottom. And then once I've got that on there, the other thing I have to do is attach this mechanism on the side here with the remaining 2 screws. I've done 1 screw hole already, so the last screw going into the last screw hole, you can see, put it in there, And there we go. I've actually managed to repair a Walkman, something I wasn't too sure that I'd be able to do. Well, kind of. Unfortunately, I've spoken a little bit too soon. It seems like it does have a couple of other issues that aren't to do with the belts. Let me put a tape in here and demonstrate. If I put it in deck B and press play, I've got the line out coming out of this into some speakers. Nothing to be heard at all, completely silent. So if I take that tape out and put it into deck A and see if there's any sound coming out of that side, and I think you probably already guessed, but when I put it into there and press play, yeah, nothing is coming out of there either. However, I figured out that if I press record on deck B, then sound will come out. So it seems like something's a little bit screwy inside. My theory is that the record mechanism is somehow continuously activated on deck B, and therefore I can only hear deck A when I'm running deck B because it's playing it back as a record monitor. I did try dubbing a tape from deck A to deck B, the thing that I'd mentioned right at the beginning of the tape as being the feature that appealed to me back in 1985 as a way to copy Spectrum games. I've got a good feeling that the duplicated tape would not have loaded because it did sound pretty wobbly. I think this thing needs new pinch rollers and perhaps a complete overhaul, but I think I've also spent more than enough time on this particular deck already. Things didn't quite work out as planned for me on this one, but I'm not as concerned as you might think, despite all the time and effort put into this. You see, this was never going to be a Walkman I was going to listen to music on. It's not a particularly good quality one. The only reason I bought it is because it's a curiosity, the only tape-to-tape Walkman that Sony made. Now, if I want to listen to tapes on the go, I've got half a dozen different pieces of equipment I could do it on, all the way up to the Walkman Professional, which would sound a heck of a lot better than the sound of that device. The thing is, though, that what this has taught me is about taking Walkman apart. You see, I was concerned before with all the little screws and things and how these things came apart, whether I'd ever be able to put one back together. And what it's taught me is, yes, I can take one apart, I can replace the belts, and I can put it back together. So now, if one of my other half a dozen or so Walkman get a sticky belt or something goes wrong inside, I won't be scared now into taking them apart and trying to fix it myself. So overall, it's definitely been a worthwhile exercise, and I hope you've enjoyed this look at the tape-to-tape Walkman and an attempted repair. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.